Well, lovely to be here. So as Monse said, I'm going to be talking about apps for the classroom. The best apps for me are easy to use, they're intuitive, easy to use for the teacher, but also easy to use for the students. And also ones that make classroom management easier in some way. Something that you all said as well, engaging for the learners, that means motivating, fun, interesting, and then ones that add value to an activity. I think it's really important. And of course, that very key point that you all mentioned in the chat as well, free. We're teachers, so we don't have a lot of money, so free apps are always, for me anyway, the best. My top three, and they've been my top three since practically forever, are Kahoot, like many of you, Classdojo, and Padlet. So I'm going to talk first of all about Kahoot, okay? Now, as you all know, I'm sure, Kahoot is excellent for quizzes. You can search for a quiz if you don't want to write it yourself. You can then edit it. You can set challenges. But what I'm going to talk about more than that is the blind Kahoots. So does anybody know what a blind Kahoot is? Okay, so nobody knows. Oh, that's fantastic news. Okay, we normally use Kahoot for assessing things or for revising things that the students already know. A blind Kahoot can be used to teach something new, okay? So instead of going into the classroom and explaining a new concept or a piece of language or grammar to your learners, then you would give them the blind Kahoot to start with. Another way to use Kahoot is to set it for homework. So I noticed in Abel's presentation a lot of people were talking about what happens when the Wi-Fi doesn't work, or what happens if you don't have tablets or the school won't let them bring their phones in. Well, this is another alternative way of using Kahoot that will get you past that problem a little bit. Alternatives, some of you mentioned these before. Quizzes and plickers I saw mentioned at the end of Abel's presentation. Other things that are alternatives to Kahoot, things like Quizlet or Quizalize. They're all free and they all do very similar things in the classroom. So the next one I was going to talk about, of course, was Classdojo. Now this is probably my absolute top #1 favorite this year. For lots and lots of different reasons. It's an app that gamifies the classroom. You can set up your class groups, but you can also form groups within it. So if you want the class to work in groups, you can set up random groups. Yes, Amparo, lots of schools are using it now school-wide. You can check attendance on it. You can give your learners points. They choose avatars. You can use the timer and music, and it's great for contact with the parents. Other things that you can use, you may have heard of some of them. Somebody mentioned in the chat just a little while ago Google Classroom. There's also this new one called Classcraft, which seems a little bit more suitable for older kids. And then there's Remind and Seesaw, which are very similar, but I think you have to pay for them. Lorena's just asked a wonderful question about, do you have the opportunity to get certificates? Classdojo has a Google Drive full of resources, printable resources for free. And some of those resources are certificates, yes. And you've got colouring pages, you've got all sorts of things that other teachers have made and put in the Google Drive that are connected with the monsters in some way. It's a really nice app. And finally, I'm going to talk about Padlet. Padlet is basically just like a notice board, somewhere where you can pin pieces of information in a physical area. Like in the classroom, you might have a notice board where you're sticking notices for the students or for parents, but it's a virtual notice board. So it's something that can be very collaborative. And one of the ways that I use it is to create a bank of resources. So when I'm teaching students, I quite often will create a homework Padlet, which they then have access to. That every week I will post the homework on there, and when they get home all they have to do is go in to see what the homework will be. Another thing that I've used it for is for collecting resources that we've used in the classroom, videos that we've watched, PowerPoints that I've made, just to keep them all in one place. But there's also another way of using it, which I think not so many people think of, is for each student to create their own Padlet and to create their own personal portfolio on there. Okay, well, thank you all very, very much for participating. And please feel free to go back to that Padlet or to the challenge and participate after we've finished if you like as well. Thank you very much.